Welcome back to Guess What Day It Is. Today is Wagon Day. So this is my 1994 Caprice station wagon. I've had this car for a couple years now. It is bone stock except for two things. One would be the torque thrust two wheels. They're 17 by 8, basically the same size as what the Impala SS had. And Flowmaster mufflers. So it's still the stock exhaust that came from the factory. The mufflers rusted out. Instead of putting, something factory on, I went with the Flowmasters. What better for a car from the 90s than a set of Flowmasters? So it still has the exhaust resonators on the back. So it isn't loud. I think it's just about perfect for what I need. This is not a hot rod. Being bone stock, it is a very nice cruiser. So I've got about 108,000 miles on it. Original paint. It's definitely not perfect, but it's got a good sheen to it. Spent most of its life in the garage. It is a Midwest car, so it does have a little cancer on the right rear quarter, but otherwise just a great car. I really enjoyed driving this. Here's the interior. Super plush. Look at this. It's like a couch on wheels. Super nice. So now this just had the cover pulled off. It's not been detailed or anything since last year, so it is a little dirty. You have to forgive me on that. So all new for 1994 is this new dashboard. Let's sit down and take a peek at it. The addition of passenger airbags is one new feature, and another new feature is this digital dashboard, which I'm going to start her up and get the steering wheel out of the way. So, pretty cool technology for 1994. Not many vehicles had digital dashboards. Pretty good instrumentation. It does not have a TAC, which did get included in the 1996 Impala SS, which we're going to talk about as we talk about the history of these cars and everything as well. One thing of note, the oil pressure gauge is not really oil pressure. It is more of an idiot light. So if you have oil pressure at all, it basically goes to the good range, so it's not an accurate reading of oil pressure or anything like that. So overall comfort is top notch. These seats are just absolutely fantastic. It's like a couch on wheels. Plenty of legroom, although not as much legroom as you would expect from such a large vehicle. Fairly decent build quality. A lot of the cars that came after this were much more plasticky. I mean, obviously this is very plasticky, but I think the quality is a bit higher than some of the vehicles that came afterwards. So it's got the good old Saginaw column, 2 keys. This one has a interlock on it too. There's a little chip in the key. Once again, pretty cool technology for 1994. Door panels, pretty standard. Lots of control over the seats. Power windows. This has power auto down for the passenger, or the driver's window. Power mirrors on both sides. Passenger side also has power seats as well. This beautiful blue interior. There's just something about these colors. I had a 94 red wagon with a red interior, and that was just, oh man, that was just fantastic. So I'm going to turn this off. I'll show you the keys. 2 keys. Look at that. One for the door, one for the ignition. That noise you heard was the power antenna that is controlled by the radio. One thing of note, if you take this through a car wash, make sure you turn the radio off so it retracts the antenna. They do not like going through car washes. So that's the front seat. So you can see there's not much legroom back here. I've got the front seat back quite a bit. I've got pretty long legs, but as you can see where my knees are. So this thing being such a huge vehicle really does not have much interior room, but that's what they did. They didn't care about us back in those days. Shove them kids back there and let's make sure they're quiet too. See, the door panels are very similar. One thing of note on these cars too, the handle at the top is what you need to pull the door closed. The handle on the bottom is an armrest. It's not a handle. They break easily, so just keep that in mind. Coming around to the back of the car, this is where things get pretty cool. So, I've got a hatch type back window. Gives you easy access into the back. Tailgate folds out in one of 2 ways. We have 2 different handles here. We've got one that allows it to swing out like so, giving you pretty easy access. We also have one that allows you to make it more like a tailgate. So very comfortable for tailgating. Very cool. One of the coolest things about these wagons is the back and the versatility that you get. So tons of cargo room. It's all sheltered from the elements just being, inside, as opposed to a pickup truck without a camper on it or anything like that. Then we have storage, which is lockable. Got a key there. Pop it open. The coolest thing is the seat, which you can see. So we've got release lever right here. Do that. Flick it up. Now you've got room for 2 more people. So, not a whole lot of room, a little bit of a cushion. Get your feet down the footwell there. You could fit an adult back here, maybe 2. It would be pretty tight. But in a pinch, if you got a family bigger than 5, because you could shove 3 people in the back seat. It may, actually 3 people in the front seat. Not that you'd want to do that, but this is definitely a good option. And if you need more space, you can easily flip down the seat. Got a knob. Then you have a ton of cargo space. You can fit a 4x8 piece of plywood or sheetrock in the back. And once again, it's all covered because it's a station wagon. So this is the shining point of this vehicle, the LT1 V8. 260 horsepower, 330 foot-pounds of torque. By today's standards, that doesn't seem like a lot at all. However, the previous generation had a standard 5-liter throttle body V8, which had 170 horsepower. And I believe the throttle body V8 5.7 had 190 horsepower. So big increase, especially in torque, over the previous generations. And that changed the sedan into a 10-second 0 to 60 car into a 8 and less 0 to 60 car, especially if we look at the Impala SS. So kind of a game changer. It was GM's last effort to get some sales out of the big B bodies, because in 1996, the final year of production, they were selling very, very little. So, but really makes this car feel light. I know it's a big car, it's 4,200 pounds, but the power of this engine really allows it to feel like a very nimble car from a power standpoint. So very cool. So how do you identify a 91 through 96 Caprice or even a wagon? We'll talk about both. So 1991 through 1993, all Caprices had wheel skirts on the rear. The wagons would retain the wheel skirts all the way through its continuous life, all the way through 96. The body style in the wagons would be pretty much unchanged. So it is kind of a challenge to differentiate between the different years. The one thing that you can do, you can see if you can spot the dashboard, which we already talked about, the single hump right over the steering wheel. That indicates the newer generation interior, which started in 94. Also in 95, the mirrors changed. So the mirrors went to a fold-away design, which mounted right in this general area, which was a much better mirror. These mirrors are tiny and hard to use, but if you happen to catch the mirror on the side of your garage or something, you would dent the door. It would actually either push in forwards or backwards, depending which way you caught it. Where the fold-away mirror wouldn't cause any damage to the door. You might break the mirror, which you probably would if you hit one of these anyway, but pretty decent improvement. So now in the sedans, in 1994, they got rid of the this type of wheel well and went with a full opening, which really helped change the look of the car. In my personal opinion, the wheel skirts on the sedans is pretty terrible. The wagons with the swooping roof line kind of makes that body line make sense, where it didn't really make sense on the sedans. So 1994, there's not much externally to really tell the difference between a 93 and a 94, outside of going back to the dashboard again. In 95, they went with a angular back window, which I'll try to illustrate here. So the 1994 Impala SS changed the rear window and put a little triangular piece to change the profile of that window, which made a significant difference in the overall appearance of that car. So in 1994 and through 1996, you could get one of two different V8s. One would be the LT1 like we have been talking about, but there was also an L99 4.3 liter V8, which is not to be confused with the 4.3 liter V6, which is a completely different animal. So externally, the 4.3 and the 5.7 are very hard to tell the difference of. The one thing that you can do is you can look at the alternator. So this particular car has a larger, higher output alternator. You really can tell by the size of it, which if you're not familiar with it, that's kind of hard to do. But the smaller of the two alternators has exposed fins. So if you see that particular alternator on a car that you're looking at on Facebook Marketplace, you're almost guaranteed that it's a 5.7. Another thing that you can look at is the cooling system. This particular wagon has the tow package, which includes a belt-driven clutch fan for extra heavy cooling. It also has a positive traction rear end with 296 rear gears. But if you find one of these cars and it has the clutch fan, which if you see this big shroud, that's how you can tell. Even the cop cars came with standard cooling, which had two cooling fans off the front of the radiator. Now, obviously, the extra drag on the engine with that clutch fan can rob horsepower, so a lot of people will do a conversion. Well, they'll put the dual fans on, electric fans, take off all the extra stuff for the clutch fan, and it adds a little bit of horsepower, whether you can tell, I don't know, but it does clean up the front of the engine, and tensioners and the parts for this particular system are getting very hard to find. So out of necessity, that might be something that needs to be done. So, but that's how you can tell the difference between a 5.7 and a 4.3. So how's this thing drive? Let's go take it for a spin. Well, it drives better than new cars, but it drives worse than new cars. It drives better in new cars in the fact that it is a full body on frame. As you can see, I'm driving over some pretty rough terrain. The car soaks up the bumps. You don't really feel it through the steering wheel. It's quite numb. The steering is numb because it has a trapezoidal type steering system. Big terms. Basically, you have a pivot arm that's connected to a steering gear, and you have a center link with an idler arm, and then you have the tie rods that join that assembly. So really gives you a lot of steering dampening, which also takes away from the feel of the road. So if you want to really understand how that feels, a lot of older pickup trucks have a similar design as well. So it does soak up the bumps, but it also leaves steering quite numb. So it doesn't give you a whole lot of feel for the road, which, once again, that's part of the driving experience for this. This was not meant to be a sports car. It was meant to be a comfortable car. So, and as far as soaking up the bumps, the short arm, long arm, control arm type system, where the spring dampens to the frame instead of dampening to the body like most newer cars with a McPherson strut type suspension and a unibody construction, you feel a lot more of that coming to you as the driver. So this one, once again, gives you that extra level of comfort. Once again, less feel for the road. However, this car, being as big as it is and as floaty as it is, it doesn't handle too bad. A lot of that has to do with the tires and wheels that I put on this. Going from a 235 75 15 to a much lower profile tire really takes a lot of that rollout because the sidewall isn't rolling. Much better grip, obviously, because there's more contact area with the road. Really changes the way this thing handles. It's got a pretty sloppy gearbox. Not sloppy in the fact that it's got a lot of play, but lock to lock, there's a lot more turns required versus like a Impala SS, which has a much tighter gearbox, better steering feel, which is an upgrade that a lot of people will do to these cars to make them handle a little bit better. The station wagons have a smaller front stabilizer bar, and they also have no stabilizer bar in the back. So once again, that's built for comfort, not necessarily for handling. All that being said, the suspension in this car is a carryover from basically the second gen Firebird and Camaro. A lot of the components that are on this cross over to that, so handling can be quite good. I've noticed that if I can load the suspension without getting a ton of body roll, once you get it loaded, you really get good handling characteristics out of that. And that's with a bone stock suspension system. Bigger front sway bar and a rear sway bar make a big difference in how this car would handle, even with its immense size. So all in all, this thing being as big of a boat as it is really not too bad. So that's something that that is actually quite enjoyable. So as far as wind noise and interior cabin noise, it's not too bad. One of the good things about this body style is the super aerodynamic design. It really contributed to its excellent gas mileage, but it also contributed to its just overall lower drag, which helps cut down on wind noise. You can have all four windows down in this thing and have a easy conversation, which really you can't do in most modern cars. Obviously, sound deadening material and sealing technology has gotten a lot better since 1994. So a newer car is going to be a little bit quieter on the inside, but overall, it's not too bad. This year was the first year for the 4L60E transmission, which was basically a carryover from the 700 R4, its predecessor. Both 4-speed automatic transmissions, one completely electronically controlled and one more conventional with that. So one thing of note, driving these cars, instead of having drive 3, 2, 1, it has overdrive, drive 2, 1. So if you're cruising around town like I am right now, you want to leave it in drive. Once you get around to the 45 to 55 miles an hour range, it does tend to hunt for overdrive and drive. And if you read the owner's manuals for cars at this era, you use both. Drive was your around town speed, and overdrive was for highway speeds. So when I drive, most of the time I leave it in drive unless I'm going to be on the highway. And what I do, I usually enter the highway, and then when I get to speed, I'll throw it in overdrive. So on earlier 6L or 4L60s, they're not known for their ability to hold a whole lot of power, but if you are in overdrive, it eliminates a roller clutch, and you get a little more engine braking, which can be helpful when coming up to a stop sign. For cruising, it's a little more challenging to maintain speed, but with that roller clutch not being engaged and just having direct clutches, it makes the transmission a little bit more robust. So if you're going to floor it, put in overdrive to make sure you don't have a bunch of neutrals after that. So what's the power like in a L2157? Let's go on the highway and see. Uphill. This car is huge, but it scoots. I mean, the numbers don't do it justice. I think just the feel of a big car accelerating is fun. You can feel the torque. Many engines nowadays produce a significant amount of horsepower, but not as much torque. So, and the funny thing about the LT1 is that is whisper quiet and so docile under part throttle acceleration, but when you nail it, it sounds like a muscle car. All that air coming through the dual butterfly throttle body really has a pretty attractive sound. So, and that's really one of the reasons I like these cars so much. I had a 95 Impala SS, one of the best cars that I've ever owned. I did sell it for a Suburban back in the days when my kids were little, and we'll kind of talk about that when we get into more of what happened to the wagon and why they're not around anymore. But that car was absolutely fantastic, and this is basically the same car. It's got the same engine, similar rear end gear. It's positive traction. It does weigh a little bit more with all the glass, but it feels pretty good. So what do I think of a station wagon as far as it being a family hauler? It's pretty terrible. I know, I love station wagons, but for their intended purpose, minivans, full-size vans, SUVs are so much more convenient. You saw the legroom that's in this. If you're going across country, if you got more than 3 kids, or 3 kids or more, shoving them in the backseat of this is going to be a pretty miserable experience. The rear-facing backseat is kind of a novelty. It's not comfortable at all, unless your kids are pretty small. And even, you know, if they are pretty small, whether or not the safety of that is really up to the standards that we would expect today, I don't think that would fly. As somebody that's an owner or has been an owner of a minivan, they work so well. If you have power sliding doors, it's so easy to open that. If you're in a hurry, higher roofs allow you to get in, out of the rain, get your kid buckled up and get them situated without too much of a problem. So, and also with the power sliding door, you can also open that a lot easier in a garage. You don't have to worry about your kids slamming the door against the wall or against another car. It just slides open and you're good to go. Cool factor, pretty much 0. I don't think anybody's going to be driving a minivan because it's cool in 20 or 30 years. That's one thing that a station wagon has. It does have a cool factor. It does share a lot of bones with a lot of the cool, more collectible cars that we're familiar with times past. And I believe SUVs are also far superior with that too. Not quite as easy to get in without having the sliding door, just having conventional doors, but a much more rugged vehicle. If you do any camping, if you have a camper or if you have a boat that you want to tow, you're not doing that with a minivan. That's where having a full-size truck, chassis, underpinning your SUV, that's great. And even some of these smaller SUVs are really minivan-ish anyway. So once again, they have a lot of utility baked in as well. And then once we've gotten, a little more comfort inside, I think that's why the full-size vans got so popular, because they were so plush. And if you're traveling across country, having a super comfy seat that you can sit in for 8 hours at a time, it's going to make travel so much better. And you can spread your kids out. They're not sitting on top of each other, poking each other, doing all that stuff. It's a much more comfortable ride. And then later on, also adding things like LCD TVs with DVD players and entertainment consoles and all that kind of stuff. So wagons suck when it comes to hauling your family around. But in my personal opinion, it's a pretty dang cool cruising vehicle. So let me know what your thoughts are. Let me know in the comments, are you a wagon person? If you're a family person, what do you think of station wagons? Should they make a comeback? Is that something that you could see as being a valuable thing to haul your family around? Are you a minivan person if you have a family? Are you an SUV person? Let me know down in the comments. So want to thank you for coming on this journey. It's a little bit of a different video than what you're used to. We're not fixing anything in this one. We may revisit this vehicle as we do some repairs on it. But thanks for coming along on the journey. Remember to hit like, hit subscribe, put a comment in there. And we'll see you on the next episode of Guess What Day It Is.